Rebels. Welcome to another show. So, today we are going to be diving into the incredible connection between movement and mental clarity. And we'll be exploring how practices like yoga, Tai Chi, and even simply daily exercises can unlock focus, creativity, and the elusive flow state. So, you may be wondering, though, why we're choosing this topic for today. Well, Michelle and I, we have all these little discussions, amongst ourselves, before we do our shows and everything, because she and I just like to chat and kind of stay in touch with each other. And one of the things we were talking about is how in the winter months, we don't get as much sun. And sunshine is one of our biggest sources of vitamin D. And vitamin D is actually closely linked to mental clarity. So we were just kind of talking about how sometimes during the winter months when there's not a whole lot of sun, we tend to lose focus. So we thought that this would be a very timely discussion for this time of year. And yeah, we're just going to go with it and see where it goes. So, as usual, let me introduce my co host and guest today, Dr. Michelle Greenwell of the Greenwell Center. And as you guys know, if you've been following us for a while, you know Michelle is my movement expert. So, I always like to have her on here when we're talking about anything that's regarding movement. So, she's like the Tai Chi and movement specialist. And we are going to be relying on her a lot today for, all the things about movement that we're going to be talking about. So I call this the movement portion of the body, mind, and movement of holistic health. So welcome, Michelle. Thank you for joining me once again.
It is so good to be here, Michaela. And I love this topic. This is great.
Yeah, this is going to be an awesome topic. And as I said, I think it's very timely, especially this time of year. A lot of people hear about uh, a condition called SAD, the seasonal affective disorder. So everyone's heard about that and they know about it, but they probably don't necessarily understand how that all connects with not with the sun and how we feel and how we move and all of that. And so, we're here to connect those dots. And I love helping people connect the dots because that's who I am. I'm the connect the dot person. Let's connect all those dots, if you will. And you're much the same. It's like, let's connect the dots. The body mind connection, you cannot ignore it. And it is there, whether we realize it or not. And when we can embrace that and make adjustments, we can help ourselves overall. So I think this is going to be very good for a lot of people. So before we jump in, let's talk a little bit about the flow state and what that is and why that's important. Okay. So it's we don't have to get really technical with it. It's like, it's like the definition of flow state is the mental zone of, full immersion and focus and enjoyment of an activity. You just think of it as being in the flow. It's like when everything is integrated, everything is connected, your mind and your body are working together. And not only they're working together, you're enjoying that movement. That's what the flow state is. It is literally being in the flow. It's like you're not worried about all the other stuff that is going on the outside. You're not, overly concerned with this. You're in the moment right then. Everything is flowing. So that, in essence, is what the flow state is, at least from my perspective. And I think in our busy lives that, everybody's busy these days, having mental clarity and achieving that clarity and focus, it can feel like a challenge because we're going over here, we're doing this, we're doing that, and we don't take the time to slow down and get into that zone. But since we're talking about movement, today we're going to be talking about how incorporating movement into our routine can be a game changer to help with that clarity and focus. And you wouldn't necessarily think of that under normal circumstances, but it really does make a huge difference. So let's get Miss Michelle's perspective on what she feels like, what she defines as the flow state from, her perspective.
I have one answer in my head, but while you were talking, I have outside my window a little bit of a snowstorm happening. And I think one of the best ways to describe the flow state is when we think about nature, because I think a
Mm,
lot of times our sadness, and I'm just going to say that from what you were just describing, is us being disconnected from nature.
mm,
And
yeah,
it's our emotional reaction to that disconnection. And our way to go towards it is often to choose mind based activities and our ego based, we can do it.
right.
But if, just as I'm looking at this beautiful little snowstorm, when you go and you stand out, for those people that don't live where it snows, what happens when you go and stand outside, depending on the day, if the snow is just coming down, you can be completely present in nature and you can hear the silence of the snow falling
Mm,
and you can hear the air, which you can't hear if you live in the city and you've got cars and people, and that's everybody's busy interacting in the community. But when you just stand where you have no control, you have no reason to do anything within a space but to just be present in it, that's when you find that moment where
mm,
how you fit into the world, but also what is your connection with nature. So a
awesome.
flow state, if I can bring that as the idea of what the flow state can feel like. And
Yeah,
it could be you're down at the beach. You could be
yeah,
by the water's edge, listening to the waves lap up on the shore and the sounds it creates and the birds overhead. And you have nothing to do with any of that. You're just being aware and present. So I'm going to draw that little picture because that might help with what the flow state might mean, but also to realize, have you been connecting to nature and have you disconnected yourself? And is that the experience that you're feeling more so than what we have diagnosed as what is going on for you?
right. Yes, awesome. Thank you for that picture, because when you were describing it, I was visualizing that in my head. Now, in my location, we rarely get snow. Although the last few years we've had snowstorms, which was very unusual. So we don't really get that whole snow that you guys get. So
Okay.
it's a little different for us, but I understand that whole connectivity, and you're taking it a step beyond just the connection between body and mind, but also body, mind, and nature. So it's still that connectivity, if you will.
Mhm.
And yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you're right. It's like being present in that moment is that flow state. And that's what I was trying to get across with with
Yeah,
my definition, but you brought it to this is what it can feel like.
that's what it feels like.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so there again, there's that connectivity between the mind and the body and the feeling and the definition, so yeah, ego, soul, all of that stuff. So yeah, and you have to kind of bring
And
that
when,
together.
yeah, when we step out of that mind game of, in our daily lives, all the things we need to touch, all the things that require our attention, all the things that we
Hmm.
must respond to, that's all ego. That
Yes.
is all conscious thought, putting processes into place and creating action.
Yeah.
Nature has its own thing going on, doesn't require us. If we show up or don't show up, it doesn't matter. We're still able to participate by just being present in it. And we can
Yes.
participate by doing something in nature. But one of the things that the last 8 weeks of my Chi integration program in the fall, we actually assessed what happens to the organs and to the glands when we bring nature in and when we
Hmm.
remove ourselves from nature. And
Mm.
instantly the systems in the body go into flow just by being present in nature. So you didn't even have to do anything. You
Yeah.
just had to go put your feet in the grass or
Yeah.
stand underneath the stars or let those snowflakes come down on your face.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
immediately the body knows what it wants to do with it. So
Yeah.
that leads me to the answer that I was gonna give you about what the flow state means for me from a Chinese medicine like perspective using the 5 element theory. 5 elements being that those 5 elements of nature all want to be in harmony, and the systems in
Yeah.
our body are related to those parts of nature. And they're looking for this way to find that balance and flow. And when we do an activity that allows us to be in that balanced state, then we're in flow. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, monkey thoughts disappear, and and the pressures of time disappear. You don't have to look at the clock, you were just there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, awesome. Great. Yeah. Actually, my mind started wandering, monkey thoughts, when you were talking, but it was a good mind wander. And that's another thing before we get too deep in this is that many people think that when you're, trying to be in the moment, that means that there's absolutely no thoughts. And that's not true. Sometimes there's going to be thoughts, and sometimes you will get thoughts that you may not want to address at that particular moment. Maybe you're trying to, just have a quiet moment, and you can just acknowledge those thoughts and say, okay, I acknowledge you, and then go back into, you know, what you're doing. But sometimes, though, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, though, being in the flow can help with the creativity. And sometimes you get those really good ideas when you're grounded in that space. So that can be really, truly awesome as well.
Mhm.
But when you were talking, you start talking about the 5 elements, it made me remember that I forgot to ask you, what tea do you have today? So let's talk about that real quick before we jump into the rest of the show.
Awesome, awesome. So yes, so from the Harmony Blends, tea blends from the Cape Breton Tea Company, I have Salty Harbor. And this one is a connection. I'm looking down at the package, so that's what my head was
Yeah,
turning for.
that's
Sorry.
it.
I just go, I'm just in love with when I'm looking at something just to kind of draw it in.
Yeah.
Salty Harbor is a connection between the heart and the third eye. So it is in its progression from the throat chakra, the throat energy, the ability to speak your truth, up to where you have what are your ideas moving forward. But it starts with the heart, and it
Hmm.
starts that movement up. And so I wanted to draw attention to these 2 herbs today. So as we're planting the seed for people to have a healing session in all that we're going to talk about and participate in, this is balance and flow is possible when we open to be present for our true heart's desires and come home to your heart.
Mm,
I thought that hit the spot of where we want to be today.
yeah.
And stinging nettle, and a lot of people will take stinging nettle just all by itself in a tea,
Mhm.
but it's got a lot more flavor when it's combined with a few other elements. This is for clearing the head to align the heart. So this is also talking about being in this flow state. We're providing the space for the soul's calling to shine through. And so when
Mm,
we're busy and we don't find that flow state, we just create all this stuff around us, but we can
yeah,
never find that true calling piece because there's too
yeah.
much extra riffraff. And then I've got calendula. And
Oh, love that one.
calendula petals are
Yeah.
so beautiful. Um, this is allowing the space for healing and forgiveness to shine through. Positioning for a chance to move clear of old baggage and to be free to have new possibilities is so important. And
Yeah.
calendula helps us get there. So, cheers, because we've got
Cheers.
Salty Harbor bringing us that as we have our conversation today.
Awesome.
Oh,
Thank you.
and my Christmas present. I have a little present inside my teacup today. And so as I'm drinking, I unwrap my present, which
Oh,
is so awesome.
oh, nice. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yes, I love calendula. That is one of my favorites too. I use calendula in my hormone balancing balm for older ladies. It's one of those things that helps us to be able to deal with life's transitions and move forward. so, so,
Exactly.
so I really love that one. That's one of my favorites. So, alrighty. So let's jump back in then to flow state and why it's important. So, we've already been talking a little bit about the flow state and what it is and all of that. But you may be going, so, but why is that important? Well, from my perspective, from a naturopathic perspective, again, this is about the connection between body and mind and how one affects the other. And being in the flow state on the physical side of things, um, it can help like release neurotransmitters like dopamine and endorphins during the physical activity that you do, which can also facilitate entry into the flow state. So it's kind of this back and forth, if you will. And we've talked a lot about movement before and how movement itself can also help reduce our cortisol, and it can, it creates the happy hormones and all of those kind of things. So those were actually, not only do they help you facilitate the flow state, but they also help your body overall and your mind overall as well. Because obviously, when you're stressed and the cortisol is high, it's hard to think clearly. That's when you start having all of that brain fog, if you will, and just being able to release, these these neurotransmitters that can clear those cobwebs. Those, just being in the flow state can just help you be able to have that mental clarity you need at any particular time, whether it's just, to be able to go about your day, or if it's, if you're trying to be creative, or if you're trying to get your work done or whatever. Those things help. And, activities that commonly induce flow states like Tai Chi and yoga and dance are some of the best things you can do when you're feeling a little clouded. So, what do you think about that?
Mhm. It's interesting because I won't be thinking in terms of the chemical reaction that happens within the body, but that's one aspect.
Yes.
But a lot of times we're just frozen.
Yeah.
And so this is what you're talking about, because those levels increase. And
Hmm.
then when we move, those levels come back into a harmony.
Yes.
And the brain requires us to move in order for it to function. So when
Yes.
it starts to doing that monkey mind chattering thing, it's telling you it's not in balance and the firings aren't coming as they should. You need to do something to help inspire. And that's where movement is so important.
Yes.
And there'll be a lot of people that'll decide to take up meditation. And like you said, the ideas will come in, their brain will be full, and they think, I can't meditate.
Yes.
It might not be that you can't meditate. You might actually spend so much of your time already frozen in a position
Hmm.
that you actually need to do some movement in
Yes.
order to open everything up. Later on, maybe you can stop and be still. And at the end of a Tai Chi set, we have that option to be
Yeah.
still. But it might not be the place you want to start in order to get those monkey thoughts to clear out. But they're just the way for you to realize you're not in balance. Those are the signals. And the chemical reactions you were describing are all coming in place, and we have to get them back into balance. That's our
Yes.
job. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you said it, the word balance, and that's what it's all about. It's about balance. It's like, yes, meditation is good. It has its place, but sometimes you need to move. So it's about balance. And then the firings and the monkey mind, that is, the signals, and you have to be aware. And that's where awareness comes in. You have to be aware of what your body is trying to tell you, so you know what you need to do. And
Mhm.
so that's all a part of this as well. So yeah, so absolutely. Um, so uh, I know I'm having my own monkey mind moment right now, and it's funny when I do these shows. I always have all of this information that I really want to bring to people, because it is my goal to help people to understand how to help themselves. And so I usually will have all this information, but then it's like, okay, what information is most important that they really need to know right now? And how do I put it in a way that they can understand and comprehend and assimilate it in those pieces that they can utilize, immediately. So
Mhm.
sometimes if you guys are watching and I seem a little stunted, that's because I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to relay the information to you that you can understand in a way, because I have a tendency, because of my background, I have a tendency to be more scientific. So, and I know not everyone follows the science. So I try to put everything in more layman's terms for people to understand. But just know that even when we're talking about feelings and energies and emotions and all of this, there is science behind it, whether you understand the science or not. And so Michelle and I both are trying to bring this information to you in digestible formats. So you don't have to know about all of the science. So just
Exactly.
bear with me when I seem a little it's there, I promise. I promise. Alrighty. So speaking of science, then we're going to go into a little bit of the science of movement and mental clarity. And we've already talked about the brain just benefits from movement, okay? And part of that benefit comes from things like increased blood flow, reduced cortisol, release of endorphins, and things along those nature, okay? And those are produced by the movements in our bodies. Now, one of the ways that I can help you understand this particular type of science in a way that you might be able to kind of comprehend it, I often will use energy flow in the body. I would also often use an example of circuits in a house, and how we have like the central circuit breaker, and you have these circuits of wires that come off the circuit breaker that goes all throughout the house. And there are going to be different plugs and switches on particular circuits to go into different rooms in the house. And sometimes if something blows on that circuit, that energy gets trapped and there's no way to go. So everything else on the end of that circuit doesn't get that flow of energy. And then you have a non operating light switch or a plug or something, because that energy became blocked. So our bodies are much the same way. We need that flow to keep going throughout our bodies in order for it to operate properly and release all of the transmitters and hormones and everything else it needs to function. And when something gets blocked, that circuit does not function properly. And you can think of those circuits, in the Chinese medicine, sometimes they're called meridians, so they're different meridian flows through the body. You don't have to know all of that science to understand that keeping the flow going helps our body function at its best. And when we start getting the brain fog and the monkey mind, that is our body's trying to tell us it's not in flow. There is something that's blocked somewhere. And one of the ways you can unlock that is through movement. Ta
Exactly. And not all movement is equal.
da! Not all is equal. We talked about that before too. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Just as Michelle was saying, it's like sometimes you don't need to sit and meditate when you have the monkey mind. Sometimes you need to get up and move. That's when I like to do, like, sometimes I like to just put on some music and just go dancing around the house.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. And I'll have dance steps that'll come out my feet. I'll just break into a pattern. And,
Yeah,
and that's too, time just stops for
yeah,
that time, right?
yeah.
Nothing else matters. Yeah.
I'll tell you something weird about me is that I used to do clog dancing.
Love clogging.
And so sometimes I will go clogging in my kitchen, even without my shoes on. So I'll be clogging in my slippers. Now, it's not making the sounds, but it's patterns that I remember that I can easily just go do. It's like, it's like, okay, I have to shake this off. So I go 5 minutes, I'll just start doing, some shuffle steps or something, and and
Mhm.
just do a little clogging. So it doesn't have to be anything specific, most of the time. It doesn't have to be anything specific, although knowing a few things specifically, which we're going to talk about for different types of conditions, helps. Just moving can just clear the cobwebs. It really does. It's like shaking that stuff loose out of your head, out of your body, just shaking it loose. So,
Mhm.
so from a Tai Chi perspective, let's talk about the science from your end.
Mhm. Mhm. We've got the opportunity that we can do movement, like you said, just free, open, moving, get everything going. What's going to be important is moving the shoulder seams and the hip seams,
Mhm,
because that is what activates the information that's going back to the brain. From the science perspective, we talk about the vagus nerve. We talk
mhm.
about how that nerve comes down, it wraps around all the organs.
Yes.
And if the organs aren't moving and they're not linked to each other, having conversations, that gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So, from the science perspective, you want to have a movement that's going to start to gently massage all the organs and start to get that movement to happen. And that's calming the vagus nerve, which is going to come back up the neck,
Mhm.
calming the neck, because very often that's a symptom, or the tight jaw or the clenched teeth. And it's bringing a looseness. And so you want to be thinking about movement patterns that create that space. So some people go for a run, and a run can be relaxing for some people, but
Not for
some
me.
people, it's painful. They set out a goal where it's a hard workout, and that adds to the stress level.
Yes. Yes.
So you might not be working in the direction that the body requires at the moment. But I wanted to show two exercises so you could see quality of movement. Both of them will help to connect energy flow back up, but then you can see how you can start to layer things. That's what I love about doing Tai Chi, and I'm sure yoga is the same, because when you start to layer pieces in there, you have this depth that you can go into the systems with,
Yeah.
and that becomes really fun. So I'm going to just move back slightly so that people can try this, they can feel the same. And so I'm going to invite you to take your hands the same way I'm doing mine and just notice what this feels like. So we start with the hands together. And this can be a great grounding and centering exercise just in itself. And then we're going to connect heaven and earth. That's what they call it. So you're just connecting the energies above. So one hand goes up, palm to the ceiling. The other hand's going to go down. And then you're going to bring the hands back together. And then you're going to connect the other way. Now, not much is happening in the body, but it does focus you.
Mm.
But your mind could still be wandering. Still monkey thoughts going on in it. So what I'm going to add to this is an activity in Tai Chi we call white stork spreads wings. So the first part, and you're going to be copying a mirror image, but copy the best that you can. It'll be the experience that's important. So you're going to open the hands up like you're filling up a bellow of an accordion. And then you're going to bring your hands back together. And you might notice your breath expanded there. Then you take one hand towards your belly, and then take it and scoop it up towards the ceiling. And the other hand's going to come down. Now, there's our connecting heaven and earth, which we were doing before.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to ask you to turn your hand at the top like you're turning a light bulb. And you'll notice the whole body is going to turn. And then bring that down. And the last part is like taking a pie from back here and just throw the pie forward.
Nice.
So what
Nice.
happens with that, when you get to here and you turn, now you've spiraled all of the spine every organ system got a new message.
Mm.
And as that organ system opened up, inside you made a turn, and now you've moved all the fascia around the organs, and then you released them. And now they're starting to talk to each other. Before, you were sitting in front of your computer, not much needs to go on. Everything is just doing its thing. But all of a sudden, you start the conversation, and stomach and spleen that like to work together, they can be together. Lung and large intestine, they can start to connect with each other. The conversations are happening. That's the difference between two very simple movements, which do move shoulder seams and hip seams, but also have a little bit more layer in it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And the extra benefit of this is that you can do that while seated.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you don't have to like be doing like this intense exercise. That's what we're trying to help you understand too, is that mindful movement is very beneficial. It doesn't mean intense exercising, which I wanted to go back and touch on real quick too, because when you were talking about the running, it flick something on in my head, because we talk about how not all exercise is equal. Now, from another point of view on this, from the naturopathic side of things, people who have naturally high cortisols, which there's a certain subset of people that will have naturally high cortisols, and that's another discussion for another time. But people that have naturally high cortisol levels, running is actually not a very good exercise activity for them. Any type of exercise activity that is competitive or goal oriented or intense is not going to be beneficial for someone who already has high cortisol. Only thing that's going to do is increase that cortisol level, which does the absolute opposite of what you need. I am actually one of those people that have naturally high cortisol. Now, if you really want to get into some stuff, those of you that are listening, when I did my work, part of my work was on blood type and how our blood type can affect not only our nutrition, but the type of metabolism we have in certain types of conditions that we would naturally have in our bodies. And being able to account for that can help us live better, because everybody is different. And knowing how your body functions can help you make better choices. And part of that is that, in particular, people who are A blood types tend to have naturally high cortisol levels. It's just part of the DNA. So they actually will benefit more from exercises that are more calming, like Tai Chi and yoga and things of that nature, which is one of the reasons why I went that route. And that's how I got into all of the Tai Chi and the yoga and stuff to help myself. And so running or competitive sports are not going to be beneficial for those types of people. But then there are other people who tend to have excess energy. Running would be great for them,
Mm-hmm.
because their excess energy can manifest in the monkey mind, because they just have all of this pent up energy that need to do something with it. So running would be something that would be very good for them. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're trying to get you guys to understand, is that being aware and listening to your body cues, and just not just picking up a plan somewhere, is going to be what's most beneficial for you. It's knowing your body, knowing your mind, knowing who you are, and being aware of your body's signals will help you be able to do the best things for you. And so that's where we're trying to get to with all of this. So, so that was my little sidebar. So I know it was probably too much information for some people, but anyway. Alrighty, so thank you again for that little exercise. I encourage you all to take take that piece and go back and look at that and utilize that. I'm sure she probably has that on her channel as well. You can go find that and other things on her channel. So, all right. So now let's move on to another benefit of movement and the flow state, and that's about creativity. A lot of people discount creativity, and creativity is very important. Not only, okay, let me back up. Most people think creativity has to do with, like creative endeavors like painting or writing or whatever. Okay. But creativity is also about creating the life that you want, and, being able to open your mind up to other things. Okay. So that's what creativity really truly is. And people discount the role of creativity in having a balanced, optimal life. And movement, particularly movements like that are rhythmic in nature, can help open that creativity. It can help you become unstuck. We talk about being stuck. Stuck can show up in different ways, physically, emotionally, mentally, being stuck. But being able to open your mind to some sort of creativity helps you become unstuck. And movement is one of those things that can help you become unstuck and challenge or spark that creativity. So, Michelle, would you like to share some additional stuff with us to help us become unstuck and open our mind to explore more creativity?
You know, yesterday we had our group Tai Chi class, and it was the 2nd of January. I would have not had class until about the 5th, but everybody said, "Oh, we'll be around." So I said, "Okay, well, let's gather." So we had our cup of tea at the beginning, and we had one student that had had 2 strokes since
Mm,
we last seen her, and she'd been in for surgery, come back, was recovering. And then we had a whole bunch of people that had passed away, and the people in the group were really trying to deal with the grief. But they came into class not wanting to disclose that because they didn't want to bring the group down. But in the course of having a conversation around tea, everybody was expressing where
yeah.
they were at and what was happening. So everybody's minds were, they were in sadness and they were in loss. They were trying to deal with their grief in their different stages. And I decided I'm not going to teach Tai Chi today. I'm not going to try to get a lesson of making some movement better. We're just going to do patterns. And so we did our Tai Chi set, which is 108 moves, and we did several saber sets. And then we did a little bit of low cup where they have to think a little bit harder because they're not as familiar with the patterns. But when we got to the end of the night, there was such joy in everybody's face, and they were so
Mm,
relaxed and they felt supported. We also did our Tai Chi not for ourselves, but for those people who needed us. So
yes.
the ones that were in recovery, the ones that were sick, the ones whose family members were all dealing with grief. We included everybody in what we were doing. And that took us out of the movement being for ourselves, which is back to the ego again, and
Hmm.
actually being a compassionate action for others. And the whole thing that unfolded in the evening when I got back into the car to come home, it was like I would never trade those experiences. And the whole group was so grateful for the emotional support that the group provides. They just, everybody was hugging on the way out the door. And so I wanted to share that because one of the things we did by doing the movement patterns was just use the patterns to help us move the body through the 5 elements. And there's layers within the body, and the
Hmm.
movements that are set up in Tai Chi provide a sequence to help you get there. Now, sometimes we can just do individual easy movements, and that works. But it
Yeah.
is really nice when you can let your mind completely go. It sounds crazy. Let your mind completely go and do 108 moves. But you do, because you get into the zone of what you're doing and the movement patterns, but also you're in this group, and the group has a cohesiveness and that energy that comes together for everyone, and you're so lifted up no matter where you are. and you're brought along. So even if you can't remember what the next movement is, the whole group kind of guides you. There's a
Yeah.
consciousness that develops. So if we go back to creativity, everybody who left that night went home with a different framework of what they wanted to do next to support whatever situation they were going back to. And they wouldn't have had that if they hadn't have come to class.
Yeah.
If they'd stayed home, they would have maybe made that cup of tea. They would have maybe eaten 10 more pieces of chocolate cake. They would, whatever the coping mechanism was, that's what they would have gone to. But instead, we opened everything up, that they felt this lift and this support and this, I'm okay to go back now and
Yeah.
support everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's the piece about Tai Chi that is hard to convey to people, because a lot of people say, I don't want to learn 108 moves. It's too much to remember. But it's the learning process that develops you, and it opens you up to learning more about yourself and where you hold
Yeah.
back and where you're blocked. So in regards to creativity, it's that process that opens you up for your mind to be free, to
Yeah.
start to think of new possibilities, to solve the problem, to, in your head, even have a conversation with someone. Even if it never becomes real, inside it will be real. And you
Yes.
can have that conversation, you can be finished with your process, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's it's just so freeing how movement can provide all of that, and you don't have to have a dialogue about it. You don't have to
Yeah.
hear the
Exactly.
stories. Yeah.
Yeah. You said problem solving. That was one of the things I was thinking about when I was giving my description of things, and I was like, yeah, being able to be creative from coming from a geek sciencey girl, my creativity shines in problem solving skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always about crafting and stuff, although I do like to craft too, because crafting also helps me become unstuck. My creativity comes about in solving complex problems. And that's a different type of creativity. So I want people to understand that creativity isn't all about painting or writing or drawing or of what people might think as the traditional creative. It's creativity shows up in all kinds of ways, whether it's like I said earlier, building the life that you want. There, in the energy realm of things, and this getting into the woo side of things, there is a limiting block that's called creative insecurity, and it's basically being stuck, being unable to see the possibilities of what you want to create, whatever that is. So, and if you can just use movement to help you open yourself up for that, why not? Why
Right?
not? Why not?
Yeah.
It's there. It's easy. So, yeah, and I too love Tai Chi, but I am nowhere near the expert of it that you are. That's why I let you talk about that part of it. But yeah, I love Tai Chi as well. I will often just, do movements going through my house just to kind of get a flow going. So I love Tai Chi. It's called the moving meditation, and it allows you to meditate while also moving, which you get the best of both worlds. It's a
Mm-hmm.
balance in itself, and then it's helping you create more balance in you. So
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So
Mm-hmm. And if the monkey mind catches you partway through the set, you completely forget where you are. That's why there's a group of you, because you can immediately look around and go, oh, where am I? And be brought back. But those monkey thoughts still show up, even though you're working through a movement pattern. And so I just want people to realize that, because that's part of the balancing piece. When those
yeah,
monkey thoughts randomly still fire, you're not quite balanced yet. So continue to do what you're doing, and it'll come through. But then once you do find that openness and you're sitting in that flow state, then intuition has this incredible capacity
Hmm.
because you can actually hear it.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's blocked because it's got so much other information coming in, and you have to keep siphoning through that. But when you're open and that space is clear,
Yeah.
creativity is so inspired by thoughts you never imagined would come forward. And you and
Yeah.
I both know that's where the juicy part of living is.
Yes.
So once you've experienced it, you want to keep finding it again. It's a beautiful addictive thing, because then it's always about coming back into balance and being addicted to the being in the balance part instead of being
Yeah.
in chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd also like to challenge everyone on that aspect too of if you're doing something and the monkey mind comes in, don't beat yourself up over it. Just go, okay, and then keep going
Yeah.
because it is a process. Okay. We need to embrace progress over perfection. So don't beat yourself up when the monkey mind comes in because even those of us who've been doing it a while, we still have the monkey minds.
And it's
And
not
it's
because we
okay.
didn't practice, it's because we're out of balance and we have to
Yeah.
come back into balance so we're
Yeah.
all the same. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Just acknowledge and go on. Don't beat yourself up over it. Okay?
Yeah.
So no negative self-thought, no beating yourself up when you're trying to you feel like you're trying to concentrate and you keep having these wild thoughts. It's a process. So just go with the flow.
Hmm.
All right. So let's talk now a little bit about incorporating movement into our daily life. Because again, I think we've all become so busy and we all have these to do lists, and it's like, we got to get this done and we got to get that done, that most people think they just don't have time to do anything. And I would challenge you that you should make the time to do it because you don't have time to not do it. Okay. Because I feel like if you don't take care of yourself and you don't incorporate movement to keep the body flowing, it's going to catch up with you at some point. And then you'll be down longer than if you had just taken that 5 minutes to do a little something to kind of get your body in the flow and keep moving. And but that's just my perspective. So I'm going to let Michelle take this topic over. So, give us some practical tips or some movement practices that people can utilize in their busy schedules because there should be no excuse not to do it.
And
It's
one of the things I was looking up today, because it's International Mind Body Awareness Day. So I just love the fact that you and I are having this conversation today, because this is so relevant. We do 22,000 breaths in a day.
Mm,
We do 12 to 20 breaths in a minute. We have a superpower that is our body. It is so incredible. And when we say we don't have time, we have 24 hours in a day. We have a lot of time. We have 22,000 times worth of breath that we're
mm,
bringing in. So then when you start to think about, well, I don't have time to do all these other things, well, how important are all those other things? The
right,
most important one is your breathing. And do you want to have 20 breaths happening, or do you want to have 12 deep breaths happening? Do you want to have quality, or do you just want quantity?
right.
So I bring that in because what I want to show you is two movements which I love for monkey mind and bringing clarity and focus, but also they open up and release different parts in the body. So again, I'm going to
Mhm.
back up so that you can participate with me if you like. And so what I'm going to do is, these are the movements for the hands for brush knees and ward off monkey.
Okay.
Okay. And brushing the knee, one hand goes up to get a pie, and it's going to come in, pass the pie out. You can schmuck somebody with the pie. You can take the old ideas, let them go. And then your hand is going to come down and the other hand gets a turn. So we have this action that's going to go like this. And I'm bringing this in because you'll notice I'm doing that spine rotation again. And what I've
Mhm.
got happening with this movement is that waking up of all the organ systems to come back into harmony with each other. So different systems have partners. So we're trying to get that back in. But every time I open up, there's my shoulder seam and my hip seam moving, and then it closes. It opens and then it closes. So we have that little piece, but we also have all of the muscles that surround the lungs.
Mhm.
And we have the diaphragm, which very often gets stuck because we're sat at our desk and we compact, and that diaphragm doesn't have any room to move. And so when you have this posture that lifts and opens, then this creates this big breathing space. So now if you're on a meeting and you have the ability to just open and close with that little action, you can imagine how much more deep breathing you're going to have. What is the thought process that's going to come with that? As we rotated, we were calming fear and anxiety. Now, your response to a conversation about a new way of doing things, trying to solve a problem, maybe somebody's questioning the way you did things, fear and anxiety could ramp up. Meanwhile, you're back here going, it's okay. Just fabulous. The second
Yeah.
one is almost identical. Instead of the hand going down flat, it actually turns up. The palm comes up and comes to the just below the belly button. So the hand comes through. And now when you put your hand this way, your spine can open. And you just do a little bit of a rock back
Mm.
as you're doing that. So you have open and then you have spine open. Now, what that means is you have length happening to the spine. You have the spine rotation, but then you have the length. You're sending cerebral spinal fluid up into the brain and you are feeding the brain,
Yes.
all with that little action. So when I put the two of those together, I can calm my emotions. I can boost what's going up to the brain. And as you were talking about all of the different chemical reactions, we have everything coming back into a balance and a harmony. So that's brush knees and ward off monkey. And you've heard me in different conversations talk about Danyus. We've talked about some spine rotation. We've done things with the neck and the ears. So I'll just
Mhm.
plant the seeds of our other conversations because there's lots of tips there. But
Yeah.
this is one of my favorite ones. And you could do it seated and you can do it standing. So
Well, there you have it. Easy peasy. You can do it. You can find time to do those simple movements that can be very, very beneficial for your overall well being. So, I'm going to challenge you, all of you listeners, to either do those or find something that you can do on a daily basis that's going to help you to be able to keep your body moving, which can benefit you overall, to help you get into that flow state, if you will. So, um, we've talked about a lot of things here, and I like to just kind of bring it all back that movement, connecting, movement to our overall well being. Um, yes, it helps with mental clarity, but it's more than that. It also helps, movement also helps keep us grounded, it keeps us resilient, and it helps us to be present in our lives. I think a lot, we've talked a lot about the monkey mind and how that affects other parts of the body. But in its essence, I feel that the monkey mind and being out of balance, it's all about disconnection. Whether it's being disconnected from nature, or being disconnected from ourselves, or our mind being disconnected from our bodies. It's all about some sort of disconnection. And taking the time to do simple, mindful movements is one of those things that can help you become reconnected. And when you can become reconnected, you can find your balance, you can find your center, you can find your heart, and then everything else opens up to create the wonderful life that you want to have. and be able to keep your body moving, keep your mind supple. Because as we get older, some of the things that happen as we get older, if we don't take care of that, we start to lose that mental focus, that mental clarity. We start to lose the resilience in our body. But if we take the opportunity to just keep moving in a mindful way, we can ward off a lot of that stuff and our lives will be just that much better.
Hmm.
So I am going to let Michelle come in with whatever she would like to, you know, takeaways that she would like us to have from today's discussion.
Um, the part that I think I would like to bring forward is people will think about not having enough time. So we've talked about that today. And we've talked about the space you create gives you quality rather than quantity. And in Tai Chi, you don't have to do lots of movements to get somewhere. It's not like working out at the gym where you're building your reps up.
Right.
You might do 5 movements and you find that balance and flow, and you've got this openness that happens. You're breathing deeply and you're like, that's what I needed. And that might be good enough. But the piece I hope that they will take from today is one of the things people will do when they're not feeling well and their mind is all jumbled is they will isolate themselves from people.
Mm.
They're not feeling quite themselves, so they'll stay home today. That is not the time to stay home. That is the time to get out and find people and connect with people and engage with them. Because when you do, you have the capacity then to open up so much quicker, but with less effort. Because you're not going to do it at home. You're going to curl up in a ball, read a book. You're going to binge watch TV. You're going to go to the fridge. You're going to do all these other things that are going to keep the constraints on. And you need other people to lift you out of that and help bring you forward. And maybe you just invite somebody over for tea.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a way for you to make that connection, have a conversation, talk about other things than what's going on, but you'll find that you'll feel so much better about what you're doing. And so if you find that you're isolating yourself, then know that is still a sign of the imbalance that's going on. And it's not a way to solve it. You need to get out there and find people to connect with. So
Community.
community. And
Yeah.
that can be down to the where the pets are, where you might need to go take them for a walk.
Yeah.
We call it the SPCA here. I'm not sure what you call it in the
We
US,
have
but
one. We have
yeah,
one here. Yeah.
you making a connection, you're compassionately outreaching to other people. And that really starts to make the change for that flow state to happen, the creativity to develop, the intuition to open up. And yeah, it's just amazing.
Great. Awesome. So we've talked a little bit about all kinds of things. Flow state, it was one of those words like, okay, what is flow state? But I think we have been able to create a visual for you of what flow state is and how important it is and how that flow state can benefit us all around. So, and part of being able to get to that flow state is mindful movement. And movement, as we said, it enhances mental clarity, it supports our focus, helps foster creativity while also benefiting our emotional and physical health as well. And so it's like one of those things that it does so many things in one that I'm all about efficiency. This is something that can be very efficient for just bringing everything into balance,
Mm.
connecting the body, connecting the mind, connecting the emotions. And I encourage you to explore movement practices that resonate with you. Go back and review this and take some of the exercises that Michelle did, or go check out her YouTube channel for more exercises. Find something that resonate with you that you will do, and then incorporate that into your life. Okay, it's start with 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes. You can do 5 minutes of something. And then once you start doing it and you start realizing how much benefit you're getting from this, you're going to want it, and it's going to become part of your life. And as it becomes part of your life, you'll be able to do even greater things and be even more in balance. So, thank you, Dr. Michelle, for your expertise. I always love hearing your perspective on movement and whatever it is, the discussion that we talk about. Again, I'm always talking about body, mind, and spirit, how it's all connected. And Dr. Michelle is like one of the best people I know to help with the movement piece of this. So thank you again for joining us. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and catch our next episode. Dr. Michelle joins me every first Friday of each month, and where we talk about movement. I have other guests the other weeks, but Dr. Michelle is here the first Friday of each month, and we talk about movement in some point. You know, so join us again. So that is it for today's show. And until next time, remember, wellness isn't a destination, it's your daily journey. Bye.
Thank you, Michaela.
This episode is brought to you by Living Naturally for Life, the Greenwell Center for Holistic Health, and Cape Breton Tea Company. Comment, like, subscribe.